Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, and I hope you had a fantastic new year and you're all ready for what 2024 may bring, whatever that may be.
David, did you ever figure out what was wrong with the GTO's engine?
Unfortunately I did. It had spun a bearing and it had worn the bearing down in the rod and it had burnt the crank out, so I can't even use it anymore.
That's a shame. Do you have any idea what could have caused it?
Actually, I think I do. Yeah, let me come show you. So after doing some research and just looking around on the internet, on forums, and seeing if anyone else has had the issues I've had, I think the bearing on the rod that had spun was down to oil starvation. The reason I say that is because on the GTO, like most engines, you've got this is called an oil strainer, or pickup tube, whatever you want to call it. So it sits like that in the base of the engine, in the oil, in the sump. It picks the oil up and then it shoots it to the oil pump, and that circulates around the engine, helps to keep everything lubricated. But this is the oil pan of the GTO. It sits like that, and I don't know if you can see on the camera, but on the bottom there's a massive dent right there. And it's quite common on the GTOs, the 3000 GTs. What tends to happen is you hit the curb or you hit a speed bump or you hit anything with that, it dents, and as it dents on the inside of the sump, right down there, that dent goes up and then it hits the pickup tube and it starves the pickup tube of oil, so it can't pick up as much oil as it actually needs to circulate it around the engine efficiently, to lubricate the engine and to prevent the bearings spinning. So I think that's what's happened to this GTO, unfortunately, along with the lack of maintenance, lack of oil changes and all that. It doesn't help, but that is what I think is the main cause, but I can't be definite, but I'm gonna go with it because it makes the most sense. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can see why oil not going around the engine can cause a lot of damage, but how are you gonna fix the parts that are damaged? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I've got some goodies for the GTO. Come have a look at these. So guys, as you can see on the bonnet behind me, we have some goodies for the GTO. Hopefully everything that I have here, minus one parcel, which is on its way, is enough to get the engine built back up and working, I hope. But let me show you around what I've got, because I think I've done quite well with this, and I'll show you a few sneaky little tips that I've used to try and save myself a little bit of money, and hopefully it doesn't bite me in the behind. Oh, and I've also got some stuff to make it look nice, because if I'm building it back up, I might as well make it look nice when I put it all back together. So here's parcel number one. If you watched the last engine teardown video, you'll know that this one I was actually quite gutted about, because in this parcel here is a rear main seal housing that isn't cracked, because mine had a nice big crack down the middle right there. So I'll come show you over here. This one, this was the one off my engine, that rusty thing, and right down the top there was a big hefty crack, and I knew as soon as I saw the crack that it was going to be a pain to find a new one, but I did it, got it eventually, and although it was a bit of a pain to do, it definitely needed doing, so very happy with that. So that's one. Put that back in the box. This one is actually a really important piece, because it is, when the box opens up, a brand new crank for the 6G72, my engine. So I haven't took it out yet because it's still got oil residue on it and I don't want it to rust, but I thought, because of the burn marks on my crankshaft, which is down here, again, if you saw the last engine video, you'd see that. I think it was that one there. It was all burnt up. So instead of getting a ground, because I've been told not to grind them based on forums like this and this, I thought, I'm not going to take the risk. I'll just get a new crank, because the last thing I want to do is get a ground, pay all that money, and then have the crank snap. So with the crank, I've been quite sneaky. So this crank, if you search Mitsubishi Gto crank, any of the ones you find typically are anywhere between 500 up to 700 in some cases. And I didn't have that kind of money for a crank, especially when that's like half the value of what I paid for the full car. So what I decided to do was, I looked at what other cars Mitsubishi made that this engine came in. And funnily enough, this engine came in the Mitsubishi Shogun, the Mitsubishi Pajero, the Diamante, I think it was called. And to cut a long story short, the crank for one of those was only 160, whereas the crank for a GTO by name was near £700. So I thought, same engine, same block, might as well take the risk. So I bought the Shogun crank, I think it was, because I think the cranks aren't actually that different, it's just the pistons that are different. And obviously you've got to look at whether it's a dual overhead or a single overhead. So hopefully it goes in and works, and if it doesn't, I've only really got myself to blame. But I thought it's worth a punt, because if it blows up, I'll just buy a whole new engine at that point, and then we'll just whack loads of expensive parts on it. So yeah, that's the crankshaft. And hopefully that'll be going back in the next few days, and you'll see a video on that soon enough. And in this box we have full gasket set for every aspect of the engine, including the exhaust. Some gasket maker, high temp silicone, I think it is, like RTV silicone. So these are for the heads, them blue ones. I'm a bit annoyed at the blue because you will see that, but it's not that bad. As long as it doesn't leak, I can live with that. Then you've got head gaskets, both sides. And then you've got your oil sump gasket, your rear main seal, which is the main thing, no pun intended, because I don't want to have to change that when it's in the car if it leaks, because that's just a headache of a job. But yeah, at least now I know when the engine's actually clean and painted, it can go back together with the right gaskets, because I spent hours online looking for them and I finally found them. Right, so this next one was actually what I thought the knocking noise on the GTO's engine was originally, until I found out a few weeks ago that the engine actually had rod knock. So if you go back to a few videos, I think it was episode 2 of the engine teardown, I mentioned the lifters on the top of the engine. So the Mark 1s, the ones this is, the 1992, the oil lifters in them engines only have a 1mm hole, which the hole for the oil to come through is only 1mm wide. They tend to get blocked up. Then you get tappy lifters because the oil pressure's not right, because they get blocked and they can't circulate the oil as they should. Whereas the Gen 2s upwards had 3mm lifters, so the hole for the oil to pass through was 3mm instead of 1, which obviously, as you can guess, will free it up. It'll allow it to flow well better, and it'll actually work as it should. So what I've decided to do is get myself some of the 3mm lifters. So when the engine goes back together, I won't have lifter tap. So those of you who don't actually know where the lifters are, if you look in the heads, right there on every valve, there's a lifter. So I think there's 24 in this. So yeah, there's 24 lifters, and every single one will be getting changed on both heads because it's on both sides. And hopefully that'll stop the possible ticking noise, and the engine will sound and run as sweet as a nut. Right, so this next parcel I actually feel a bit criminal for doing, but I can't see why it won't work. And in this is, if I can get it open, a second-hand rod. So the piston head I could use, because it is off a 72T, so it's the same pistons I've got, but the rings won't match with the cylinder. So I've got a new rod. The rod itself is all I need, because the big end, which is the bit at the bottom, that is actually okay, that's round. There's no scoring on the bearings, there's no wear anywhere that would worry me. And I've also used a telescopic gauge and a micrometer to measure the roundness of the big end, and it is within tolerance. So hopefully if I whack a new bearing in that, stick that in with the other pistons that actually worked, they can go straight back in the block, and that should work. Fingers crossed. And last but not least, this box is purely to make the engine look all nice and shiny and make it look like a new engine, even though it's got 95,000 kilometers on it. But you know, if you're going to do it, you might as well make it look nice. So in here we have some engine degreaser. That's to clean it all down and get rid of all the rust. Hopefully it works and it doesn't take too long. Then we've got high temp black for the block, high temp aluminium paint for the block, as well as 2 tins of the brush on stuff for any heat shields or hard to reach areas, and they will make it look nice and shiny. And then I've just got to buy some paint for the rocker covers over there, buy some paint for them, and then that is everything in terms of making the engine look nice and hopefully it actually working. So that's everything I've got currently, but like I said at the start, there is one parcel in transit that hasn't turned up yet, and that is new bearings. So it's new big end bearings and new main bearings for the actual crank. So when they go in, I'll get some plastic gauge, we'll tighten it all down, make sure the tolerances are right based on what the manufacturer recommends, because I've got the manuals I can refer to. And then hopefully it's all in tolerance, no issues, bolt it all back up, and soon enough, the engine will be back in that car and we can actually start it, and hopefully it doesn't blow up. While I'm here, I'll give you a little walk around of the car as it is currently, because I have got most of the panels back on, but they're not bolted on, they're just on. Partly to remind me that it is actually a car, but also so I can see how they fit and I can start prepping them soon enough for paint, so then when the engine's in, I can put the panels on after the fact, and then the bonnet will be the last thing I need to do. But I'll spin you around now and I'll show you what it looks like. There it is. Got the wing on, the bumper on. All that is just resting on, it's not actually on. And then the back end of the car. If you saw the wing video, then you'll know what the score is with that, where that's come from and why I've put it on. I haven't fitted it properly yet though. Then round the back, I'll show you very quickly. Got the lights in. Got the caps on, the bumper. The lights do actually work, which is good. And it's slowly getting there and looks a lot more like an actual car, which is quite nice. For the headlights as well, the headlights have been in for a while. But yeah, that's how she sits. So that was an update on the GTO's engine and where we're at with it currently. As you can see, it's still in bits, but we have got things in place to put it back together, to get it working and to fix what's broken. So in the next few videos, we'll build it back up. I am going to paint the block and the heads off camera because it's not really that engaging and it's not great content. But if you want to know how I've done it or any tips or tricks, leave a comment down below and I'll reply to any comments and I'll answer as many questions as you have. But all I'm going to do is just degrease it, wire brush it, dry it off, and then paint it with some high temp paint and make sure it's fully cured before we start putting anything back in the engine. But the rebuild process you will see, and I will follow it up in the next few videos. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, smash that bell notification so you get an update when I post the next video, and you can stay up to date with the GTO, the build, and see how we're doing on the channel. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Afraid to turn out the lights.